It's the 8th of October, 2022. Time keeps passing. We do what we can with the short time that we're given. And there's a feeling that we're all practicing here together. It's very nice. So when we come here to meditate, whatever our mind is doing, at least we're here with our Kalyanamitta, with our Dhamma friends. We're all practicing. So at the very least, we can encourage ourselves by saying to ourselves, well, at least we're here trying to meditate, we're here trying to practice. So whatever the mind is doing, it's important to not be too hard on ourselves. We have to remember ICAB W, it could always be worse. And there's, I remember living in Hawaii and before I ordained, and having a roommate who was an old, grizzled, big wave surfer, and he'd obviously had a very hard life, but he was a really, really nice guy. And I remember seeing in his room, he was reading the Tao Te Ching. And I was getting pretty depressed at that time, and he was kind of concerned about me, and didn't really have too much of a relationship with him, but I remember I was getting pretty down on myself, and it was at a period of time where I was kind of not sure what I was going to do with my life. I was 20, I was just 20 years old, and then one day he kind of pulled me aside and said, no matter how bad you think you've got it, there's always somebody who's got it worse than you. No matter how bad you think you've got it, there's always someone who's got it worse than you. So that had a positive effect on me, and I felt very supported by that good advice. And it's really true. Actually, I was just focusing on the negative and needed to be more focusing on the positive. So this is like the teaching that I was kind of thinking about what to talk about tonight, and we hear it all the time, but it's such a core part of the Dhamma practice, which is how do we know that we're making progress along the path, and that's if wholesome states are increasing and unwholesome states are decreasing. So when I think about how to look at this, because sometimes we might be perplexed, what's a wholesome state, what's an unwholesome state? So the Buddha termed something wholesome if it leads away from suffering, if it leads to the ending of suffering, or at the very least if it leads to happiness. And he termed something unwholesome if it leads to suffering. So that's how we know that the Pali words are kusala and akusala. Kusala is wholesome, akusala is unwholesome. And so we can think of this as positivity and negativity. And so if we get lost in negativity, that leads to suffering, leads to loss, leads to a lack of success, leads to failure. That's where negativity leads. And it leads there every time. It's not that sometimes negativity leads to happiness. It doesn't work like that. It always leads to suffering. And positivity, when we cultivate a positive mental state, I remember just yesterday, and because I've been trying to do this cultivation of wholesome dhammas and relinquishing of unwholesome dhammas for so long, I can see a little bit having a bit of a dhamma compass to see, oh, that's negativity. Get rid of that, relinquish that quickly. But it's so convincing sometimes. It's always very logical. Yes, they did do something wrong. Yes, I should be angry. But then we have to remember, yes, that leads to suffering. So coming back to positivity, and if I can see for myself, if I get angry at something or someone, or irritated by something or someone, that kind of reflex that happens when we come up against unpleasantness, then suffering follows straight away and can be like a downward spiral. If we feed it too much, then it can last for quite a long time. But if we catch it right away, then it might take a little bit of time, but we can actually rise out of it. And then I found that I was able to get out of it yesterday, this brief negativity I was experiencing. I was able to get out of it pretty quickly by shifting my focus to something positive, just not focusing on that which was giving rise to the negativity. So sometimes we just have to shift our focus to a different object. I can see, oh, there's something positive over here, so I'm going to shift my focus to this positive thing. So that's really what we have to do in meditation. So if we focus on something negative, say about ourselves, I did this bad thing, or I don't have this particular good quality, or we can get really down on ourselves. And that can be one tactic to try to make ourselves make progress along the path, is trying to look at all these, trying to take a negative approach and stamp out all the qualities that we want to get rid of in ourselves. But rather, we can try another approach, which is the positivity approach, which is looking at like, okay, well, I'm here in this meditation hall, I'm actually practicing, I'm actually trying to meditate, and that's good. That's a good thing. We can encourage ourselves. At least I'm not acting on these thoughts that I'm having during the meditation. At least I'm not acting them out. I'm still just sitting here. These thoughts that I'm having, I'm not getting up and running out or something, or not following them. So that's practice. Not believing in them, not buying into them. So that's what we learn during meditation, is how to not either follow our thoughts or try to get rid of them, but see them with mindfulness. So Buddhist meditation in particular is seeing our thoughts arise and pass away with mindfulness. And when we have that sense of mindfulness and clear awareness, then there's a stepping back from what's going on in our mind. It's not that we have to take it and change it, but we can just see it and not be as involved with it as we were before. So there's that sense of stepping back, and it's the first step in meditation, but it's also, we need to do that all along the way. Over time, as we cultivate this, progress is slow, so sometimes we don't notice the changes. But there are things we can look for. There are kind of signposts we can look for, and one is a lack of absorption into distractions. So how does this manifest? I found over time, so at first I had all these ideas about how to practice. So when I came here, I was quite sincere and wanting to practice and wanting to meditate a lot, and had this idea like you need to meditate a lot, ideally all the time. And there was a lot of meditation happening here. There was the lunar observance days. There was these all-night vigils, these all-night meditation vigils we were doing about once a week. And I really was drawn to that. I really liked that. And I thought, yeah, this is what we need to be doing. But I also had a lot of ideas about practice, and I had a lot of ideas about stamping out negative qualities in myself. So sometimes we'd have our morning work meeting, and the main Dhamma hall used to be what's now the dining hall. So we did everything in that space, where we now have tea time and the meal. We actually had all the meditations in there and all the Dhamma talks in there as well. And it'd be the morning work meeting, and I would be sitting upright, thinking to myself about, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to practice in this way, I need to kind of get out of this mental quality, and then to hear like and I need to I have my eyes closed, and I need to do this. And then I hear this Ajahn Ñāṇiko's voice, Ñāṇiko, Ñāṇiko, Ñāṇiko. Oh, somebody, they're telling you what to do for work today. Oh, right, okay. Like, oh, you're working with this person and this person and this person. And, right, okay. I wasn't being mindful. So it's having been distracted by my own proliferations, I wasn't just paying attention to reality of what was happening right in front of me. So over time, as we cultivate mindfulness, that changes a lot. So I found for myself what caused that to shift was the upataking, or being the attendant to senior monks. And so I found that having to focus on the needs of somebody else, not my own needs, kind of getting out of my own story, getting out of my own proliferations, was incredibly helpful. And when you get really into this practice of being an attendant to a senior monk, eventually I got to go to Thailand and attend to senior monks there. Eventually you learn how to be really on point, and you're looking out. What do they need? What are they doing right now? What direction are they heading in? How can I be of service? How can I be of help? That's like positivity. I was able to come out of myself. And so eventually that quality became very deeply rooted in me. And now I can't even remember the last work meeting where I was kind of totally distracted in my own mind and not able to pay attention to what was happening. Now it's just, okay, what's going on? So neither too externally nor too internally focused. The mindfulness is right in front of us at the fore. That's how we abide at ease. So it's incredibly helpful to have this training, to be aware, to learn how to pay attention, learn how to focus. And over time, there's a lot of peaks and valleys in the practice. And usually to get to the next peak, we need to go through a valley. And then we're on that next peak, and we're looking to even the next higher one, and we need to go through another valley. But the peaks do get higher over time. But it's certainly a long journey. And then over time, those preconceived notions about what practice is just getting kind of falling away, because that's a really important quality to cultivate as well, is that self-honesty of, what I thought before wasn't correct, being able to relinquish that. So we shouldn't hold on to ideas about how to practice just by virtue of the fact that we've been holding on to them for so long already. So there can be a sense of strong identification there if we've been holding on to certain ideas for a long time. And then it comes to the point where, there's strong evidence here that idea was mistaken, that way of thinking was mistaken, that view was mistaken, but then I can't let it go because I've been holding on to it for so long already, so what does that say about me? I was praising this idea to others, I was talking this idea up to others. What if I admit that it was actually wrong? What does that say about me? What it actually says about you if you admit that it's wrong is that you have integrity. But that can be, we have to take that leap of faith to rise up to that level. If we can admit that we were wrong about something, that's integrity. That's really good. That's really wholesome if we can do that. And we need to be able to do that even as us senior monks need to be able to do that. I might be mistaken about something, or something might come out during the teaching, and if somebody comes up to me afterwards and says, I just wanted to check about that, I have to be willing to say, well, actually, yeah, I'll look into that. Maybe that wasn't correct. Rather than, well, I've been a monk for such and such number of years, and how can you question me about that? I obviously know what I'm talking about. So integrity is always that willingness to keep learning. Luang Por Sumedho is always a big advocate of a life of learning for your whole life. It's not just about just learning and then stopping at some point. We learn for our whole lives. Sometimes when we're meditating, we need to be able to look at our own mind and just kind of chuckle at it. Just how it's doing that again. Okay, well, we'll just we're not going to act on that. We're just going to watch it doing that. We're just going to note that. The monastery, the monastic life itself, especially people who end up ordaining or taking on the anagarika training, novice training, bhikkhu training. So people who make a deeper commitment to living in this monastery, then the daily schedule, the daily grind is actually designed to bring up a lot of these difficulties and a lot of highlighting the negativity in our own minds. Really, it was there before, but we're uncovering it. And it's like we're dredging the depths of our inner being and looking and seeing what's there. So it's like a process of purification, cleaning house. So just using mindfulness to see what's there in the mind, what's going on in there, what are the habits and tendencies, and how can I move toward the wholesome and relinquish the unwholesome. So I really think that key word, sometimes having these key words to remind ourselves, positivity. And sometimes there's not really much we can do about the mind is just throwing a fit. Sometimes the mind just throws a fit and there's not much we can do about that. But we can at least not act on it. We can restrain it. We can say, okay, well, I'm going to watch that with mindfulness. And okay, that's the mind throwing a fit. The mind throwing a fit is like this. It's unpleasant, it's complaining, it doesn't want to be here. It's throwing a fit. So we can think, okay, well, I'm a grown-up, I'm an adult, and my mind is acting like a 3-year-old. Why does it do that? So the mind is very primal, very basic. And we just see that it does those things. It has these basic qualities. Very memorable talk that Luang Por Liam gave when he was here. Previous visit, quite a long time ago, but it is one of these talks that kind of stuck with me around this theme, was that the mind has these default reactions. And it's the way that dependent origination works, is that feeling, when we have feelings, certain feelings, then the mind has certain default reactions to those feelings, and those have to be seen. And then we also have certain default activities that we do based on our feelings. And really, it's all just feeling. So it's good to see that. So when there's unpleasant feeling, the default reaction is not wanting. And the default activity is criticizing. So when there's an unpleasant feeling or there's some sort of suffering, default mental reaction is not wanting it, wanting to get away. And default activity is criticism. We complain, we criticize. Pleasant feeling, then default mental reaction is wanting more of that. And default activity is praising. So when things are going well, I love it here, it's great, everybody's great. So it's very basic, it's very simple. And just seeing that happening, even when things are pleasant, when things are going well, seeing that that's not sure. That's because I feel good right now. I feel good right now, therefore I'm praising this situation. And that's just how it works. Or we have neutral feeling, and we can become confused, bewildered, unmoored, not sure what's happening. Or we hear these teachings about, in Buddhism we talk about not self, the body is not self, the mind is not self. So we can think about these teachings and think, oh, well, if I don't know who or what I am, then well, who am I? What am I? I feel confused, bewildered, without an anchor. And yet, the qualities that are said to come about from a realization of not self are unshakable stability, unshakable confidence. So it's just these ideas. We kind of trick ourselves into thinking that, oh, well, if I think about these teachings, or if I don't have this sense of self or know who I am, then I'm going to feel... We trick ourselves into feeling confused, feeling bewildered. One quality that's also said in the suttas that falls away at the time of stream entry, or the first glimpse of awakening into the Dhamma, is this quality of doubt. And the way it's described is one is no longer perplexed about wholesome and unwholesome states. One's no longer perplexed about wholesome and unwholesome states. In addition to that, two other qualities fall away, which are, they're called the first three fetters, Sakkaya Ditthi and Silabbata Paramasa. Vicikicca, doubt is vicikicca. Silabbata Paramasa is attachment to rites and rituals. So thinking that things like bowing or chanting or things like this will enlighten us in and of themselves, or have some sort of benefit in and of themselves for our mind. So that idea falls away. We know that it's just how we hold the mind. We know that it's just the cultivation of positivity and the relinquishment of negativity. And Sakkaya Ditthi is the relinquishment of the personality belief, or that I am this body and mind complex. That falls away. We see that as we see into the impermanent nature of that and the fleeting nature of that. And we're freed from that. We're freed from that bond, that fetter. So those are the first three fetters that bind us to suffering. So those fall away when one gets the first glimpse of the truth of these teachings. So we can encourage ourselves with these things, with these kinds of, we can tell ourselves, okay, positivity, even if the mind is throwing a fit, doesn't matter, don't have to act on it, looking and seeing, okay, this is what mindfulness is, cultivating it even in the face of negativity, just to see it, just to step back from it. And that can be incredibly helpful. So we do have this good opportunity. We're all here practicing in this monastery. And even if our mind isn't the ideal mind, it isn't peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature, like in the Metta Sutta, sometimes we can beat ourselves up because it doesn't have those ideal qualities just yet. So even if it isn't that, at least we can encourage ourselves and say, okay, we're here practicing, we're doing it, we're actually putting the effort in, we're actually doing the work. And that can help. That can help to be a sense of encouragement or a sense of lifting ourselves up. I'll leave that for reflection this evening.